Looks good. I think we should be live. Let me just check. And yeah, I think we are.
Great.
Right. Great. No, fantastic. So, first of all, welcome everyone to another uh, podcast here that we do here at Arcana on the regular, where we like to talk about all things modular, interop, improving user experience, solving fragmentation, all of those sorts of things. And today we have a very special guest here. We have Nick, of course, who's the co-founder of Fuel. Hello, Nick. Thanks for joining in.
Hey, yeah. Thanks for the invite.
Glad you could make it. I remember I was stalking you across Thailand, different places of Bangkok, trying to get you to see our demo, and uh, I know that was probably a bit overbearing on my part, but here we are today. We just launched our chain abstraction on Fuel, and like what I know you probably seen the demo. What are your initial thoughts?
I mean, I think like this is the way. I mean, I really believe that. I feel like I think there's a lot of different hurdles that we've artificially created with basically with blockchain in general. So abstracting away all of these barriers and these hurdles means that you can access whatever the chain is actually going to provide, right? So at a deeper level, if the chain is going to give you something, some differentiator or something else, it becomes much more accessible when all of these barriers for the users are gone, right? And it also opens up other doors. So, with layer twos particularly, you have to be really picky about where and who you develop with and all this other stuff, because you're often like scared about, okay, if I do something here, then users won't come because there's all these different barriers. And I feel like with both what you're doing, right, with Arcana and also chain abstraction, but also more broadly in this space, it's basically something that this actually makes a lot of sense to lower all those barriers, such that again, things like Fuel's execution environment, et cetera, can be exposed to the world essentially, but not have any UX hurdles, when it comes to liquidity or some of these other things. So I think it's totally the way. I think it's totally the future. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. No, absolutely agree. So actually, let's try and contextualize this conversation a bit, right? So I'd like to start with some of the history of Fuel, and this is very important. And I think viewers will come to realize why we need to contextualize it in this way. Is basically some people may not know, but you guys were literally the first stage 2 L2 back in the day.
Yeah.
And then there was a point in time where you said, fuck it, we are going to like redo everything from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And from being like the first stage 2 L2, faster to it than Arbitrum, Optimism, who probably started out just slightly before you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what led, what was that? Was there a moment, or was it just a collection of different things which got you to this point saying, no, we need to redo this whole thing because we will then get ABC? What was that moment like, and what are these ABCs that motivated you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the core motivations were that, like, when I started out building on crypto, there was nothing. So there was very few apps, very few things going on. There was a bunch of different chains from the 2013 era and that kind of thing. But effectively, you couldn't build really consumer apps pretty much on Ethereum. And that, before rollups especially, you definitely couldn't do it. On other blockchains as well, they were also really cumbersome. So the whole user experience and product that you could construct on blockchains was really, really bad. I think this leads to a lot of issues because, uh, we all want to believe that, we can basically redo things like the financial system and all this other stuff. But if you can barely build one consumer app or one app that actually people want to use, right, then you end up with like an enormous amount of baggage and hurdles in the way. The reasons why that is, though, are also something that, like, are really related a lot to the architecture. So if you kind of look at what blockchain architecture was before or when it started, a lot of it was pretty much a big guess as to what things might be or what they might need to be. And so even when Ethereum kind of in the early days when the EVM was just a a thing in testnet, I was using Ethereum or developing on Ethereum before mainnet. So it was a long time ago. We all kind of knew that the EVM was really, really constrained, but it could kind of do certain things, maybe really basic stuff like registries or whatever, and that was it. And we really didn't know what it could do. Some people tried to build some exchanges at that time; they weren't very good. They didn't work out well, but there was just like an enormous amount of hurdles to building anything kind of real. And what we noticed is that the architecture of the whole system was very, very poorly designed, and it has been for many, many years. So, a lot of what Fuel is about is trying to set the architectural course of blockchain on a different path. It's very, very painful to do it. It's not easy. When you actually go this route, everything hurts. So every integration that you wanted to get, you have to do from scratch. Every builder has to kind of go through a different process. The end result, though, is that you actually get the combination of very highly performant chain design, and you get sustainability. So if you just turn up the EVM tomorrow, you basically get a completely unsustainable system. And you can build whatever you want, but you end up with a system that's basically never going to live outside of mega servers or things like that. And so when we want to build blockchain and do it well, you want kind of crazy amounts of execution, but you don't want it to have to run on crazy, crazy servers. I do think there's places though for crazy, crazy servers. I just think that if we want blockchain to succeed, we really need a new kind of execution architecture, and one that really factors in all the different design hurdles that you see with app development. Fuel very much right now is in a very early stage with a lot of its apps. So the ecosystem is very, very early. We're still working out our own processes and our own hurdles ourselves. But I think that essentially when you get to like designing good apps, or you get to designing good consumer facing design, you want it to be really highly performant, but you also want it to be actually sustainable, and you want the user experience on top of that. So you really want the trifecta of everything. And so Fuel is now at the early stages of that journey, but I'm very excited. I think especially because some of these other hurdles that are kind of outside of Fuel, like bridging for layer twos, etc., is hugely alleviated by things like chain abstraction and also kind of new forms of bridge design. So these things are like, I think all of these things are gonna allow us to both express our kind of massive throughput, but bridge users over in such a way that they're not even going to know that they're on Fuel, basically. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. So I'd like to share our experience, and this is extremely candid, and I hope you don't mind.
Mhm.
Uh, we've obviously kind of gone ahead and supported a bunch of layer twos.
Yeah.
They were extremely low hanging fruit for us. It was very easy for us to actually go ahead and do all of
Hmm.
that. Fuel was the first like non EVM that we took up, and it's like there were many things that were different that we
Yeah.
started to kind of realize as we started to get in more. And the whole process took us quite some time and quite a bit of back and forth. Like you said, you guys are still early in your journey and things like that. You're not able to kind of, easily plug into, say, a third party service, which would be almost de facto if I launched an L2 tomorrow.
Yep.
Like I could probably this probably just money is involved at best, but it's a very easy integration. It's very straightforward,
Yep.
and we were finding that in a bunch of different places, some of these things weren't even like available. What you'd normally expect an L2 to like have, like say an RPC provider or a bridge provider and things like that that you typically come to expect. But having and initially, to be very honest, we were like, "Oh, this is good. This is really taking a lot of time." And this is, like the developers would complain, and they would be like, "Oh, is it really worth it?" and things like that. But now that we've done it, I can see what you're talking about, because fuel, bridging over to fuel is probably the fastest and the cheapest that we have on our entire network at the moment.
Mhm.
And it most importantly is also extremely predictable. Like, if I wanted to do something on fuel, it just happens.
Mhm.
I don't. I'm like, there's no weird like gas spike fluctuations. There's none of that stuff. Where something completely external to my wallet and the app that I'm trying to use
Yeah.
suddenly just goes bonkers, and now I don't know why. The wallet doesn't tell me why. The app doesn't know why,
Yep.
and but it just doesn't work. But here it just works, and that's
Yeah.
what we've been experiencing, and that's really really cool. And I just wanted to commend you guys on that. It's hard. It's like chewing glass,
Yes.
really, but
I
it's
think I think it's amazing to hear though that like after you chewed the glass, it was good. You know,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's amazing. I think a lot of people experience a very similar thing too, but it's like um, I don't think there's any other kind of system or architecture that is as predictable or is as fast or is as capable as what we've constructed. I think very much so that we're in a bit of an odd spot because we know we have good infra, we know we have good stuff on the inside, but as well, like I think that hurdle for the development, but also for some of the apps, I think to actually get into a good place or a good position is sort of the next step for us, right? And so it's like, you know, it's kind of like driving a Ferrari, but the internals of the Ferrari or something, or like the dashboard's not there, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like very strange, but once you're in, you're like, okay, damn, that's good. You know? So
yeah.
yeah, I think that we really can go toe to toe with pretty much every other execution architecture, like hands down for sure. And I think as well, like we'll release some numbers soon that'll totally wipe the floor in terms of pushing execution for blockchains way beyond what like whatever Firedancer does is not anything close because basically they have to process oftentimes they have to process per transaction, which is already an issue, and then they have to process signatures per transaction. And Fuel's designed a completely different way. So even signatures per transaction is not even a concept we even have very much. So if you're doing really crazy kinds of like order book settlement or something like that, um, we just have a way better paradigm for these kinds of things. So
Mm,
um, so I think like a lot of these things are untapped, but I still feel like the big hurdles right now for Fuel are largely around bridging, right, liquidity, and
yeah.
then, well, like Fuel will need to demonstrate its kind of core killer app, and I think that in trying to demonstrate that, then everything else makes sense, right? Where it's like then using Arcana and chain abstraction, all of this sort of stuff is like alleviating that pathway, but Fuel still needs to kind of shine on the architectural side because I think a lot of the apps we have are great. They're really good, but they're very much like what you see in other chains. So now the
Mm,
next step is sort of like let's show people kind of what we can do, and I feel like
mm,
that's very much where we need to head if we want to solve the other end of the hurdle, which is like not so much getting there, but why am I going, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, very cool. Yeah, no, look forward to those numbers, and I'm sure these are extremely exciting times for you guys as well. Yeah, so like the point of all of this contextualization and stuff like that is just generally we have this thesis that of why chain abstraction and why it's great. Of course, it does all of this cool stuff where I have funds on all these other chains, and it gives me where I intend to be able to spend it and things like that.
yeah,
And we'll talk a bit about that and just interop in general. But I think the point is that people ought to be able to come to innovative like chain ecosystems like Fuel and build, even if there is no sort of like, it's like liquidity is not overflowing into Fuel at the moment,
sure.
but that should not have to matter. Like, apps and developers shouldn't, and even chains for that matter, shouldn't have to necessarily play these sort of like TVL games
Hmm.
where it soars up if you do something, some sort of game mechanic into it, or it's just a straight up incentive, and then it just doesn't sustain, right? So if people can come, like, make that shift over to fuel and realize that, okay, this is great for my app because it helps me achieve a bunch of different things which I can't really achieve elsewhere,
Yeah.
then the liquidity or users coming in to be able to use it should not really be what stops people.
Yeah.
So from that sort of like standpoint, like how are you viewing like chain abstraction, interoperability in general in the Ethereum verse, so to say?
I mean, I think I think the fragmentation issue is getting somewhat addressed a little bit by certain solutions. I mean, I think Arbitrum is going to try to make something happen there, and I feel like others have been talking about it. I think our view on it shifted a lot. So initially, we were very protective about trying to get the canonical bridge to be as secure as possible, and we really favored that as much as we could. The problem is you have the 7-day withdrawal delay, which sucks, and then that creates a liquidity risk for liquidity coming into Fuel, because then it needs to know, is the price worth it? If I need to go out, it's going to be 7 days, right? So for large liquidity providers, it's a lot. And then on top of that, you kind of have the user side, which is like, okay, so even for smaller users that just want to come in and out, then you have the current bridge situation with things like, having the canonical assets on both sides of the bridge because you want the security. But the downside of that is also it's completely capital inefficient because you don't have new capital just kind of entering the right way. So I think that, like, the way that Fuel's viewing it is solutions like chain abstraction are going to be really important, as well. I think that we want to build better ways for your solutions, right? For like chain abstraction to work with Fuel, such that the routing and the UX kind of framework of what Fuel can be will be very much completely abstracted to the user, such that, like, if I come from any wallet or any chain, there's not going to be major hurdles. I do think because you guys are focused on this, though, you're going to provide probably a more unique and maybe better solution than like a base level version. But I think that at the base level, we do want to solve some of this, because otherwise we're going to get this situation where it's like, even if we had some really new and interesting primitive that came out because of the way Fuel works, you're going to have all these issues with, like, effectively either liquidity or users or TBL that are always going to play into it. So when you abstract it away, those issues are no longer a problem. And then you can fully extract from what the chain can do and the architecture can do. And I think that's where you can really excel. So basically, at least that's my current purview on the space right now. I feel like, yeah, we'll definitely be working further to like alleviate bridging, and also making sure that like your solutions are ones that they can play well with all the different apps that we have, with minimal work, hopefully. So like minimal integration work instead of like a lot of integration work. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. I mean, I think it's definitely the way it's gonna all go. Yeah.
All right, great. Uh, so you want all of this sort of like developer experience to, of course, improve tremendously and things like that. But to what end? What is the ideal user experience you want to be able to deliver? Like, months, quarters, years down the line, whatever time frame you pick.
I think the ideal experience is very much that, like, let's say I'm a user on like Base or on Solana. I want to be able to go into a Fuel app and within like 1 or 2 seconds, not have to switch wallets. If anything, not even use a wallet. Use the app, do so safely, feel good about sort of the security parameters of that, and then decide whether I want to stay, convert, or go, right? And I don't want any hurdle in between that. Even a wallet, the concept of a wallet gets in the way of that also. And so I think that, like, what you really want is you want people coming from wherever they are, using the benefits of your chain, and then leaving. And if they want to stay, that's great. But if they leave and they have a good experience, then it's also good, And that really allows the infrastructure to serve its purpose. It allows the app developer to build the best possible apps they can. And there's just no hurdles, right? And then in terms of interoperating the apps, I feel like cross-chain interoperation is still really bad. I think like it can be done. It's just not something very nice or efficient, and there's a lot of time hurdles and stuff. So I think like for Fuel, we would definitely look for more within Fuel kind of a cross-chain application work to happen within Fuel. But that initial experience for a user needs to be very much that like if I have a bunch of funds on base and I just want to come into Fuel for a second, do something and go back, I need to be able to do that, right? Right now we can't, but that will become the case. And I think that we need to build that experience. Otherwise, we're not building the best experience, right? If I have to go through Ethereum and then the canonical bridge in, or even layer swap and over, and I have to think about it, like not to blame layer swap. I think layer swap can be integrated well into apps too. But just like if I have to think about it, then it's a problem. And then also, I'm sure you see another problem is if I'm using apps and there's like wormhole ETH, and there's layer zero ETH, and then there's ETH. And it's like, was this the solution to interop? Probably not. So it's like what you really want is ETH. And now there's certain ETH that we know is better ETH, and there's certain ETH that's worse ETH. So if I've got layer zero ETH, it's a little worse than canonical Arbitrum ETH, right? Like we kind of know that. Just layer zero could mess up a config tomorrow, and the whole thing goes up, right? So Fuel actually has some unique solutions to this that we're going to release soon that will actually alleviate all of that within Fuel itself. So for the user experience, you're just not going to have to, basically deal with any of these things. You can just go in and out. And I think that's the ideal experience. Yeah.
Got it. So in like chain abstraction circles in general, we have a little small sandbox where there is also this other working theory that users shouldn't be users of chains; they should be users of apps, and the apps are basically using
Yes.
trying to make like that Web 2 sort of analogy where you're saying, oh, chains are like AWS and the apps leverage AWS and the users are using the app instead. So you now basically promote like almost like this fat app sort of thesis where you're saying you abstract away the chain completely, where to a point where users don't even know what chain they're probably using, right?
That's
So
what you want. Yeah.
like people going to Moonshot or any of these places probably don't even know that it's on Solana. People going to Polymarket back in the day when it was really, really hot probably didn't know that it existed on Polygon.
Yep.
What is your take on that line of thinking? Is that too much abstraction? And if so, why? But otherwise, what are your thoughts?
I don't think it's too much abstraction at all. I mean, I feel like depending on where you're securing funds, you do need to know some of the security properties, or like what bridges am I in, or what things could go wrong. But quite frankly, that's like a sub note for a lot of users. And a lot of users are just ensuring that we want these chains and these zones to be kind of in the background, and we don't really care. It's like if I have funds somewhere in crypto, most of crypto is a verifiable space. So you should be able to prove and or move around all of it without having any issues. I mean, I can understand if you're coming from banking or something else that's soft and opaque, right? But within crypto, once you're in, wherever you're in, you should be able to use whatever app you want. And I think that there should be minimal fees for that, and it should be very much a good experience. I think that when you're looking at the design space of apps, though, and the kinds of consumer apps that people probably want, I think they want much higher performance, much higher precision, much higher ways that people can effectively leverage this sort of like shared verifiable space. And you can see that with like if Solana, crashes because there's a lot of people doing meme coins, it just means that there is the potential for humans to use these systems a lot, and they need a lot of sort of scratch space to be able to do what they need to do. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. So I think in the future, blockchains really just need to be this kind of these different zones of sort of this scratch space for applications, but it very much needs to be abstracted away for the user, and it needs to be about the application because the apps are really what humans are going to be doing mostly. And then as far as like AI agents are concerned, like they're probably a little easier to route because they're a machine and not a person. But even they will want a lot of scratch space to do a lot of things between each other so that they can either service humans or service themselves. And I think that like we're completely underestimating how much space we're going to need, I think. So like if you look at the amount of humans on planet Earth that will probably eventually enter crypto and eventually be entered into these systems, the amount of throughput you're going to need is enormous. So whatever throughput people are doing now, it's not enough. Even if it's in the millions of TPS, it's probably not enough. So I think that like this is very much part of the cause and part of the journey is just to say that like you know we're going to need to prepare for a lot of that, and it's not here now, but it will definitely be there in the future, especially as AI takes over more of our lives. We're going to have to move a lot more of our economies on chain and a lot more of our person, and when we do that it means there's going to be a lot more need for execution space basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point you make there. So uh, you've spoken a bit about Solana in general, and you've also spoken about Firedancer, and I think that comes from a place of clear respect that you have for what they've managed to kind of execute and things like that. But like say closer to home and in the Ethereum world, I think there is a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes to kind of fix these problems and start actually competing and definitely not lose any more ground. And I
Mhm.
think you guys and everyone else has really answered like the scalability problem to a very large extent. Now, very clearly, the only problem left, perhaps the biggest problem left, is this interop problem
Mhm.
and fragmentation problem. And but do you see that as like the only like thing left to do in order to make Ethereum great again, or how are you seeing like solving for that in a
Yeah,
sense?
I mean, all right. Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? Anything can, any kind of technology could probably solve any sort of problem if it's applied enough and you just have enough money to throw at it. I think that Ethereum's lucky that people have thrown so much money at its machine and everything else that it's sort of worked for us for a lot of different use cases. I think Ethereum's starting to witness, though, that when you make the wrong kinds of architectural decisions or you don't plan for the future, you end up in a really shitty position, right? Where basically, like now, you know, if we're to say, and by the way, I have a very deep respect for, I think, a lot of these different teams, so don't get me wrong. But for example, if your solution to Ethereum is to not use Ethereum and just use a massive server that's centralized somewhere, not going to name any names, and just sort of like drive a crazy database at it, right? Well, that was not what Ethereum was or is or probably should be, right? And even similarly, right? Like I think Monad, for example, is a good example of like it's going to be hopefully as decentralized as Ethereum. It'll be this, very fast layer, and their version of very fast is like 10,000 TPS, right? But 10,000 TPS can't even do what Visa does. So, what kind of use case is this really going to solve? Because it's either not enough for what we see with certain card providers, but it's also like it's more than Ethereum, but it's probably sitting in the same range as Solana. So why not just use Solana then? It's not enough, right? And I think that this is the whole problem with a lot of these things is like, what would you like to end up with, right? And when you actually redo the architecture and you start from scratch, you solve all these problems in advance, right? And of course, like developer experience and growth, some of these other things you're going to struggle with initially. I think everyone does with something new, but you get some interesting results. So, like for me, on a Rock 5B board, which is a $135 computer, right? Fuel can do, in parallel, like 17,000 TPS, right? So, and that's not even trying. That's a very small computer. That's a very bad small computer, and you clock 17,000 TPS, right? Now, if you move that up to like an M4, right? We easily clock in the 150 to 200,000 range. And then if you remove signatures from the picture, then we clock up to 400,000 TPS on a laptop, right? And And so when you look at the numbers and the scale and the vertical of what the EVM restrains you into, I can see why people are willing to build on Solana, right? Because Ethereum's not willing to challenge its own architecture to say, like, maybe we just shouldn't use this machine. Maybe all this stuff is not so worth it, and instead maybe we should just use some other architectures, right? Because there's actually better ones out there. So I feel like growing a new architecture is really, really tough. It's very, very painful, but it's totally worth it when you actually start seeing the numbers and the results and where it can go. You can get to some just crazy results that you just like no one cares anymore. So I guess no one cares about this, but like what's right around the corner, if you just do something different, is insane. And I feel like people just don't know. So, and I understand why people don't know. It's a very noisy market. There's a lot of stuff going on. No one knows kind of what to do or where to go. So, it's a difficult place right now to build all of this kind of stuff. I think it was easier 2 or 3 years ago, quite frankly. It was a lot quieter to build something interesting. But like regardless, I feel like benchmarks and numbers will speak for themselves. And also like, I have a lot of faith that as engineers kind of like chart their path through these things, and as things like bridging and liquidity don't become a problem anymore, then you just pick the best thing, and the best thing becomes very, very obvious. So yeah, on the point of like, Ethereum fixing itself, I think it's very much that Ethereum can't really fix itself unless it starts challenging its own mistakes. And I feel like the EVM was probably one of its greatest mistakes. And the evidence I have of that is a man named Anatoly from Solana, and so if you want Ethereum to succeed, you have to abandon that and you have to go somewhere else. Because the thing is, what's right around the corner is so much more exciting. Like it's literally so much better. And even Move was a better innovation over the EVM, but Move still sucks. So then you go beyond that, and then there's something even greater than that, right? Now, Move will be fine. I think Rushi is going to take Move to the stars, so it'll do really great. And not trying to knock Move, but there's just so much more right around the corner if you're just a little more flexible. And people just don't know that, and it means you open up all this design space, right, and all these new kinds of things you can do. So I feel like that's very much what Ethereum needs to probably do to win. But I don't really know if Ethereum is going to be ready for that. I don't know if it's really set up for that in that way. And I think it's very much like it's a safe place to hold money and transact. That alone is a huge deal. So we should not fault it for that. But I think that if it wants to win at the throughput game, it probably shouldn't. It should probably look to some other designs, basically. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think it does completely. And no, totally. Also, as always, your candor is extremely refreshing in the space in general. I've seen you speak publicly, and also your Twitter in general.
Yeah.
And yeah, it doesn't happen very often. People choose to be very diplomatic more often than not. But yeah,
I think I have a lot of deep respect though for all of these
yeah,
teams.
I know.
They're like, Monad building whatever their own database. Like, okay, crazy, but go do it. Fine. Mega ETH, trying to get a higher TBS by a bigger server, could work. Could be interesting, right? Similar with Solana, right? Like trying to use BPF or some of these other things underneath the hood, like really interesting. But I think that at the same time, there's a different route where you just try to design the right thing and you don't be so afraid of it not working, right? And just go that distance. So Fuel is very much going that distance, if so, just to progress the entire space. Only in the sense that I don't think most people really actually ask the question: is there just a better way to do this under the hood? And I think as you see that, right, like some pain developing, but then when you're on the other side of it, it's just like, this seems significantly better, and it's because it is. It's just going to take us some time to get it out there. Yeah.
All right, great. We're coming close to the end of our conversation, but I would really be remiss if I didn't ask you, like, because you care so deeply about the sort of experience you want to be able to deliver, not only to the developers but also to the end users.
Yeah.
Um, you, what would you like really like to see from us, or people like us who are trying to kind of ensure that developers' lives are made easier, and users' lives are made extremely easy, because then they basically are just using apps irrespective of where the funds are and things like that. But
Yeah.
what is that one thing that you'd really like to see happen that would go that one step further from whatever you've seen so far?
Yeah. So this is the thing I would like to see, and I think that it will happen eventually. It's just something that we haven't really had all the pieces in place to get us there for various reasons. So we never really got there enough. But this is what I would like to see happen. Um, I would like human beings to use these applications truly in their decentralized form, not have to feel like it's any different from how they interface with anything else. But I'd like certain things taken care of. And they're very complex things, but they're really important things. So, for one, if I have a lot of money in a machine somewhere or something that I have access to, you don't want to make that easy to use,
Mm,
because it's a very dangerous thing to give a human being the ability to store a lot of money somewhere and then in one click just ruin it all, right? So we have to be really cognizant of the fact that, like, most people using some of these systems, it's like their life savings, or it's like everything that they have is maybe
mm,
in their wallet. So the problem with wallets and applications right now is they do not balance this really, really important basic thing, which is that blockchains are an immutable deterministic system, right? Unless you fork them or change them or upgrade them or whatever. But in general, that's the direction we want them to go. And so you have this thing where you have, like, okay, super deterministic, whatever, but that's the most inhuman thing ever. Humans want to be able to, like, pick up the phone and call somebody and be like, hey, other human, holy shit, I just sent my money to the wrong place. Can you stop it? And then another human goes, don't worry about it, bro. Like, we got you. We're going to
mm,
cancel that, right? Blockchain does not have this. And because it does not have this, it means that everything needs to be designed in such a way where when I use an application, you use the application. If it's a small amount of risk, then it should be very easy to use the app. If I've accepted, like a trading terminal, if I've accepted that I'm moving a lot of money and I can just flub it, okay, that's fine. Like, if the user is fine with it, good. Then I should be able to hit buttons and make big trades, and that's okay. But I probably don't want my whole life savings exposed to some random app that I just
yeah.
started to use. And I also probably want to be able to have some mechanism to just kind of, like, help me out and check some things, because a lot of the stuff is really, really badly designed. So, like, wallets right now, they help a little bit to try to prevent you from making the wrong, like, app, like they try to blacklist things and stuff. But I think we got to go way beyond that. I think that, given the state of machine learning now, wallets should be very defensive as to how they actually work. And they need to be able to, like, warn the user, like, hey, something here isn't right. So don't do this, because this you'll probably lose your money here, right?
Mm,
And, like, I think very much this needs to be part of the experience. And then another side of it needs to be that, um, if I've set up a user with a wallet experience, and they're using an app somehow, I kind of don't want to deal with the wallet. I just want to use the app. So just let me use the app. But if I'm doing big things, right, like big moves, big money movements, whatever, maybe you want to slow them down a little bit for their own sake, and they'll probably appreciate it. Because, if I'm doing, like, lending in like a lending app, right, like on Fuel, like Swayland, right, and I'm lending money, that's a process where I probably want a few extra confirmations, right? Like, that makes sense to just, like, slow me down a little bit. It's a lot of money. I want it slower. If I'm, like, trading in a terminal and I've accepted that it's speed and my human reaction, then I want the experience to be really quick. But I need to, like, kind of give it permission, right? And I think
mm,
that, like, wallets and the app experience right now doesn't do any of this well. And I think that
mm,
no one's actually figured out a right balance. And there's probably hundreds of thousands of people right now losing money because things just aren't set up properly, right? And I
mm,
think that's basically the case. So I think we need to solve a lot of that stuff, in addition to abstraction and some of the other things that stuff like you guys solve. If you really want to complete the circle, and that involves using multi-factor wallets, it involves using daily withdrawal configurations, it involves, um, basically doing a lot of different control mechanisms so that if this user fucks their whole setup, they forgot their seed phrase, they burned half of it, whatever it is, they can just slowly get all their money back over time, right? Through something. There's someone on the other side. Maybe there's some service as well that like will help bail you out, like you have to fly to Switzerland. Like if it's like over $1 million, you have to like fly to Switzerland and talk with a Swiss guy. And he's like, okay, we think you're real. You need to stay in this hotel for 3 days and then we'll give you your money back, and like just to make sure that you're really real, that you're not some guy, right? We need these kinds of things because otherwise, like this whole thing's going to be really poorly managed, basically. And it's all
Mm,
going to end up managed by central authorities because that's how humans work. And then
mm,
we're going to be back at the same problems that we have with banks. It's just going to be now with central authorities. And I think we want to avoid that, right? So I think we want like people to have self-control, but you want to have all these different like controls and bailout mechanisms just in case, such that like you don't run into some of those bigger issues, right? So this is stuff that like I talk about with Baco, like our multi-sig. I very much want them to move in this direction, and I would say you as a wallet sort of builder, I would definitely want to see you guys move in this direction too, because
yeah.
these are all the things that every other wallet doesn't do, right? And these are all
Mm,
the things that every other wallet's not doing well. They're not controlling for in the experience, and you kind of like hate it because we should be doing this on behalf of the users. It makes a much better experience. Yeah.
yeah, no, and I fully agree that the owners of this should probably be on wallets
Yeah.
because unlike apps, they don't have an incentive for the user to spend more, right?
No. No.
Uh, yeah,
And,
no, yeah.
and also when you integrate that multi-sig, even if your wallet code is bad, the multi-sig stops it, and I can see the multi-sig and verify that, right?
Mm,
It just starts reducing all of these other forms of risk when you have other structures involved, right? We can really leverage what blockchain's about. And then that way it's like, even if our Arcana wallet tomorrow like had some big bug and it was like a wallet drainer, right? They could only drain 1 day's worth of my money, not
mm,
all of it. And it's like, just imagine how much better the world would be, just in case. It takes the pressure off you guys too, because you're like, you've designed for this. So now it's like, it's even better, right? So
yeah,
these are the things that I think we need to do if we want to progress the space. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, no, makes a world of sense. No, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. I'll just take last 5 minutes from you, Nick, before we let you go. It's been an amazing conversation. Thanks so much again. But we'll just do this last segment. 5 questions, quick fire answers from you, please.
Okay.
Yeah, just a note to everyone here. This is Nick on the spot answering in the moment. He has deep respect for everybody. He loves everyone. I know this for a fact. We've spoken about this. And also none of what he's going to say is any financial advice for anyone. All right. So with that said, Nick, 5 questions. I just want you to give me the quickest answer you possibly can in the fewest words you possibly can.
All right.
So number one, who is your closest competitor?
Closest competitor. I think right now, given the way the space is shaping up, probably Mega ETH, I would say. But you could make the argument that it could also be some of these other layer twos or even Arbitrum and Optimism, for example. But I think given Fuel's nature, probably something like Mega ETH or maybe getting into like, some of the other layer twos, probably in that area. Yeah.
Got it. Your favorite community that is not outside of Fuel, basically.
I mean, does Ethereum count? I guess it could kind of count.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it goes against your own grain of.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, maybe outside of Ethereum. Let me think. I think. Let me see if I can think of one. I think that some of the Cosmos builders and community are some of the more impressive and interesting builders in the space. I would say, in almost a similar vein to Fuel, in a sense, like probably pretty bad at marketing and growth, very good tech. Yeah. So probably then. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Great. An app you really want to see built on Fuel in the near future?
I think we want to see. So it's already being built. A project called V12 is already building order books on Fuel. but I think I want to see crazy order books on fuel. So I think that that's something that I'd really like to see happen. It's definitely an area that we're thinking about. So I think that area probably makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
What's a crazy order book? Just so people can know.
A crazy order book would be one that you're processing something, you're processing like say 100 or 200,000 cancellations a second while
Okay.
you're doing trades. Yeah, that's a crazy order book. So like
Yeah.
if you were to visualize it, it would look like some kind of waterfall or something absolutely absurd. Yeah, that's what I would like to see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. All right. What's the one big thing people should look forward to from fuel this year? One.
I think that will alleviate all bridging issues, and I think we'll also alleviate a lot of the developer hurdles that are there. I think there's a lot of good stuff we're going to release soon that should alleviate a lot of that. More decentralization, probably an expansion into Alta, and as well probably working more closely with some of the ZK teams on a Validium architecture uh,
Mhm.
for security. So I think these are all going to be things we'll probably think about. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Last question. What is, according to you, going to be Ethereum's all-time high price in this cycle?
In this cycle, well, so I've been in Ethereum for basically since it started, or almost since it started, right? I have been pretty bad at predicting what price it was. When Ethereum was 25 cents, a guy named Andrew Keys came up to me and said, Ethereum, it's going to be worth $1. And I literally almost spat my drink out. Like I was just like $1, fuck, it's never hitting $1. It's like if it did, I'd be really excited. That sounds super exciting, but it's not going to happen. So that's my level of price prediction. Basically, is I was blown
Yeah.
away that Ethereum could hit $1, and then when it did, I thought, holy shit! Well, if it hit $1, maybe it could hit two. You know what I mean? Maybe it could go double from here, right? So basically, yeah, I've been a lot more obsessed with, I think, building things than I
Of
have been
course.
with price. Yeah.
Yeah, but with that said, what's your number? Anything?
Well, I think that I think the problem that I see right now is that Ethereum is actually a really good bet and a really safe bet for big institutions to buy. I think we're starting to see large institutions buy Ethereum, which is awesome. It's really cool. I never thought I'd see the day, but they're loading up on it like crazy. I think that in good form with what we see in Wall Street, when an asset that's really good is in crisis, all the institutions buy during that time. So
Mhm.
the institutions know Ethereum's a good project. They're buying everything. So in the short term, I think Ethereum is going to continue to look like an absolutely horrible project, and you should never go near it and never touch it. And it's over, and Vitalik's never going to figure it out, and the EF's in chaos, and oh my god, it's the worst possible thing ever. Mind you, we've been through like 10 of these already, right, as a community. So and it still works and it's fine. So basically, what I would say is it's going to continue to be the worst possible, boring, awful asset that no one can figure out, no one can market. Probably this cycle. But I think that its future is very, very bright because the fact is, there's so many people that care about it, that care about, by the way, someone else's creation and coin. Like
Yeah.
very so, very much so, something that was founded by a bunch of people, and the community is so big, so wide, and it's so vast, and there's so many people that care about it. I just don't have any concerns in the mid to long term for Ethereum as an asset, and I think that there's no reason why it can't go crazy, go to 10K or 15K or whatever. I think once people realize how bad paper money actually is, because we're still realizing it, we still don't even know how really bad it is. Ethereum's going to be great. Ethereum will be worth right to the moon. It's just right now, it's the worst possible thing. You shouldn't go near it. I wouldn't touch it like with a 10 foot
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Radioactive as well.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll let you fully sidestep that one. I think your quality of your answer otherwise was far better than any number you could have given us, to be honest.
Probably. Yeah. 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 Sorry
All
about
right.
that. Maybe I should have just said like 3K. I don't know. But Yeah, whatever.
No, no, you're good. You're good. No, thank you so much. Thank you overall, Nick, for this amazing conversation, sharing your thoughts and things like that. Super excited to be building with you guys over at Fuel. Can't wait to see all the new stuff that you guys come out with. Yeah, and would love to kind of do this again once all of that stuff is out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, real pleasure, and super exciting to see it actually all working. Like, it's amazing. So really, really great job from your side. I think chain abstraction all the way. Like, we're here for it. So yeah.
All right, cool. No, thanks so much. Please take care. Have a good day. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye bye.